In this update, we've got two areas of low pressure. They're going to be impacting the East Coast this week. One has actually already formed off the Jersey Shore. The secondary low looks to form off the southeast coast sometime on Thursday. And there are actually indications that could take on some sort of subtropical characteristics. We also have a little bit of a cool front that's coming in off the Pacific Northwest. But here's the instability I'm a little bit more concerned about that's forming into Utah, going to be diving through the Rockies. That's going to be setting the stage for several days of severe storms highlighted over the Central Plains. And for today, let's look at the surface map. So here's what's happening right now. So there's that first area of low pressure that's impacting with some heavier rains in and around the Boston region, going into New York City, impacting portions of, say, Rhode Island, back into Vermont and New Hampshire. There's even actually some flood warnings out here further north as you get up into Maine. But out here, out into the Pacific Northwest, there's your cool front, right? There's back behind it, back in Salem, back in the Seattle region, very comfortable like conditions. But more concerning is this area of instability that's just now coming into fruition. That's going to be diving through the Rockies and really getting elevated instability. And that's the same piece that's going to be impacting portions of Oklahoma back into Kansas sometime during the day on tomorrow, later on in the afternoon. And then we'll have to be watching these series of cool fronts is going to be draped across and going back out in the open waters. And it's those tail end of the fronts that could actually spin up a little bit of an area of low pressure as we get deeper into the week. So in fact, here's the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. Here's Nigel. That's expected to be actually a major hurricane, but the good thing about Nigel, it is going well out into the open waters. Here's another area that could actually form into Ophelia, has actually a 70% chance of forming. That will continue westbound. We'll have plenty of time to watch this storm. But here's the more concerning about it's got a 30% probability of a non-tropical low right now could actually take on some sort of subtropical characteristics by the time we head into Thursday. And there are actually some indications that it could potentially form. We'll go over the data in this video. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns, hit the subscribe button and you're in. You get all my daily content on this channel. And I would love to reach 200,000 subscribers by the end of the month. And you can help me get there by subscribing to the channel and following all my daily reports. So let's break down the details for you later on this afternoon. There's the surface map again. So where there is a low pressure hanging off the Jersey Shore, and then that's going to bring in some instability, some higher wind gusts across these regions, but definitely some heavier rain in and around the Connecticut region, into Rhode Island, back into Massachusetts, getting into Vermont and New Hampshire, portions of upstate New York, and definitely especially Maine. Maine's been getting hit hard lately. And further south, there's the just added around this boundary into central and southern Florida. That's the cold front, right? That's that stalled front that's going to be hanging out in this region, bringing some instability, and eventually probably might spin up an area of low pressure. Here's the other low pressure that we're going to be concerned about, highlighted over the Four Corners regions. That's the instability that's going to be diving through the Rockies and eventually set the stage in the middle of the country. So here it is on the surface map going into tomorrow. You got the temperatures, out back behind this cool front, back into portions of the Seattle region, into the Salem region, back into Portland, definitely on the cooler side. And then there's the added instability. You got plenty warm conditions out ahead of it, well above average temperatures, but there are signs of some cooler air aloft. And so as instability hits this atmosphere, it's got that colder air aloft to tap into, and that is going to set the stage for severe storms. And some of those could be some big time hell producers headed into tomorrow. So it looks like to be a late afternoon, early evening type setup around 6 o'clock in the evening. Storm initiation should fire along this region, and these become supercellular, 60,000 foot cloud tops could produce some quarter size, golf ball size, even some tennis ball size, maybe not out of the question in and around the Oklahoma City region into Wichita Falls. Those regions are a little bit more susceptible to seeing the highest hail producers. And I think as they continue moving, say east, east southeast bound into the Tulsa region, into the Dallas-Fort Worth region, they'll transfer into more of a damaging wind threat, kind of like a downburst wind threat. And also weakening storms, collapsing storms. That's where you'll get those microburst type winds, as not really hail producers by then, but just collapsing thunderstorms with some higher wind gust coming out of those storm systems. But here's the wind. So here's the breakdown of the wind over the next 48 hours. So you've got the instability that's coming through the Rockies, right? Some of these winds could be packing a punch, 50, 60, maybe upwards to 70 miles an hour. Definitely, especially if you get it around the Oklahoma region, Oklahoma City, Ardmore, Lawton, all those areas, mainly around the Red River. I think that's where you're most susceptible. Once you get into North Texas and of course further south, they look to collapse. They don't really make it there. But out ahead of it, especially along the Red River, definitely be on high alert with some, 50, 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts with these cells. There's the higher winds from that first area of low pressure into New England, and of course there's that stalled front back into central and sort of southern Florida with the higher wind gust as well. And if you look at the rain, that's basically what we have. And so for the next 2 days, you've got some instability back behind that cool front in far extreme portions of the Northwest, but overall pretty dry. It's just really to the middle of the country that we got to be concerned about with that some of that severe storms. And there's your rain amounts going into those over the next 2 days. But there's the rain, with the first area of low pressure that's impacting the East Coast right now. So yeah, some of these totals could pick up 1 to 3 inches over between now and say Wednesday morning from that first area of low pressure. Then of course, here's that stalled front, right? Back into central and southern Florida. Those also could be pockets of 1 to 3 inches, of heavier rain with them. But going into Thursday, we have a little bit more significant system. There, we had a pretty good vorticity drop through the western regions and really kind of be getting its act together and spin it up. And this is going to be having some pretty cold temperatures with it as well. And this is the little bit more potent system coming out of that region, as this is going to be traversing across as well. So underneath that, it's going to be on the chilly side, folks, heading into Thursday. All those areas in green, that is 40s, right? These are high temperatures. These are at least afternoon temperatures going into Thursday afternoon, 4 or 5 o'clock. So whenever you see 40s on the map, that's definitely on the chillier side for September standards as we get near the first official day of fall. But yes, out ahead of it, you got 90s still draped across a good part of Texas, but you have the 80s along this area. And this is the area that we're really concerned about this week, really across the Central Plains states into Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, into Arkansas. I think those areas have to be concerned about several days of some severe storms, not really tornadic storms, but could be some larger hail with these, definitely some higher winds produced with these thunderstorms. But also on Thursday, I think that's when we'll have our secondary lows start to come into fruition. So here's the latest icon guidance of that low pressure, 1009 millibars starting to take shape, starting to show up on the map. And as this develops, we'll have high pressure over the top. That's going to allow these lower pressures underneath. And most guidance actually has this actually continuing to strengthen. Just 24 hours later, going into Friday afternoon, it could be down to about a 999 millibar. So that would be a 10 millibar drop just within that 24-hour period. Here in the middle of the country, across Kansas and Nebraska into eastern portions of Colorado, there's that more significant system. Those you have to be likely probably some more severe storms with this. And we'll be all eyes on deck as this low pressure looks to form, because you've got high pressure over the top. Pretty a pretty setup for low pressures looking to form, and this could steer a little bit closer to the Carolina coast. So if we look at the latest GFS, some of the water vapor imagery, we could be looking at a stronger tropical type system Right now, the National Hurricane Center has it maybe taken on some sort of subtropical characteristics. So this is just now coming into fruition. So right, just now is an area to watch. What that it had even formed yet, right? It's not even there yet, but a lot of guidance along that stalled frontal boundary. We have a area low pressure. So once that forms, obviously, once you have a closed low, then it could actually, start intensifying. And that's what some of the guidance looks like. So this is what it could potentially look like by the time we head into Friday evening, as that area of low pressure will be off the coast of South Carolina, as we'll have that more instability draped across. That's a cool front that's going to bring added instability across the middle of the country as well. So here's the breakdown on some severe storms that could unfold. It's really highlighted over the Central Plains. So these are maybe multiple days where you could impact some higher wind gust, some larger, smaller and larger hail at times. But the main setup is going to be you have Tuesday, and then you'll have pockets of energy Wednesday and Thursday. I think you'll have a bigger system really start to take shape on Friday, and then there's that cool front with more added instability, with heavier thunderstorms and some severe storms along that cool front during the day on Saturday. So off the East Coast on Saturday, we'll be dealing with that area low pressure. So here's the latest icon guidance, is actually fairly bullish. Could be looking at maybe even a minimal hurricane potentially. So this has the potential to maybe take on some sort of subtropical characteristics and maybe even form into a minimal hurricane as some of the most bullish guidance looks like as of right now. So, and this could all happen in 2 days, folks. So it doesn't really take shape until Thursday, and it could take on, subtropical characteristics, and then could potentially be a higher end tropical storm or maybe even a low end hurricane. We'll just have to fine tune this as we get closer to the event. But this is the way it looks right now. We could be having an area of low pressure impacting portions of the Carolinas, say around the Jacksonville area, going into the day into your Saturday. Here's the ensemble guidance, kind of implying the same thing. We've got areas of low pressure. This is based on the European ensembles. Areas of low pressure impacting the Carolina coast. And there's the system on the latest icon back to a 994. So remember, it goes from 1,009 to 999 to potentially a 994 right off the coast. So that's a 15 millibar drop in about, going into a 2-day time span over a course of about 40 to 48 hours. So yeah, we'll have to watch this come into fruition. I was just kind of giving an early look at what's happening with this setup. But right now, a lot of the guidance is hinting at that area of low pressure, and then that could actually spin up into a low end, high end tropical storm or a low end hurricane. And obviously that would be bringing some heavier rains and some higher wind gusts, especially along the coastline here. So these areas definitely have to be on high alert from this system, likely from South Carolina to North Carolina, all the way up into Virginia Beach. Those are the areas that are most concerning right now to keep all eyes with this system. And here's some of the wind gusts that could be along with it too. So again, this is just kind of coming into fruition, right? This is some of the latest and newest guidance, and some of the model data that's coming in could be off the East Coast. Some of those winds 40, 50, likely maybe 60, like possible, low end minimal hurricane, maybe off the East Coast here into the Carolinas, possibly Virginia. And then we'll have the middle of the country with those added, along the cold front as well. So we'll have multiple days of severe storms that we'll have to be concerned about in the middle of the country. There's the setup on Saturday. So you got that instability across the East Coast into the Carolinas, bringing that heavier rain off inshore, and this will be moving up the coast as well. So you got that one area low pressure you're dealing with right now, and this is the more formidable secondary low, could be impacting the areas going into Saturday, and then that will be lifting up the coast as we maybe get deeper into Saturday night, going into Sunday. And then there's the instability that's draped across the middle of the country with that cool front that's going to be coming across to bring in fall, a first official day of fall. And that could also add some extra, instability. So if you break it all down, here's the rainfall estimates, just over the next 7 days. So you got the cool front coming in the Pacific Northwest. Back behind it, you've got those lighter rain showers. Then we'll have multiple systems coming across the middle of the country, likely the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, back into Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, into Missouri. Those are the areas that likely get hit the hardest over the next 5 to 6 days. And then that secondary piece, first low pressure impacts New England, second low pressure impacts the Carolinas, Virginia, and then likely goes up the East Coast as we go in to the weekend. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do check out my winter forecast that I put out a couple of days ago at the end of this video, and stay tuned to the latest update while I protect you before and after storm.